Os, I'm Watanabe Shinji, Kudo Daido Shihan, and also Yuigaryu Karate Renshi. I post a video about kata for the first time in a while. Today's theme is a consideration of Naihanchi's jo-ge-uke to ura-ken action. But for those of you who have recently discovered my channel, you may be wondering, why is a sensei of Kudo, which doesn't have a karate kata training system, uploading kata videos? Therefore, let me start with a brief self-introduction. Os. I'm 61 years old now, but still an active Kudo competitor. Even it's in the adult division, not the senior division. I always enjoyed the very intense Kudo fights, which takes under the full contact knockdown rules against the younger opponent in their 20s or 30s. The reason why I can do it is kata. Yes, karate kata. Kudo Daidojuku does not have a karate kata training system, but I have personally studied and practiced karate kata, and eventually became able to fight using kata movements. That's my secret. Through fighting in Kudo, the modern fighting sport that is the closest to the battle of the era of karate's origins, I have become convinced that kata is truly effective training for actual fighting. And I am active in this channel in the hope of sharing my acquired knowledge and experience with as many people as possible. But first, one thing I must make clear here. If you can fight using kata movements, you will be strong even when you are old, and you will be able to fight against younger people. There are many karate senseis in this world who make such claims, but who among them has proven it? Who is there a sensei in his 50s or 60s who has proven his ability by fighting in public against a young, well-trained fighter under equal conditions? Probably no one. But I am different. Even now, in my 60s, I fight under equal conditions against well-trained young fighters in public, and I have digital data of my fights, and I'm showing it on this channel. That is proving the correctness of my kata theory. I think so. He says, if you master kata, you can fight even when you are old. You can easily defeat a younger opponent without using power. There are many senseis out there who live in a fantasy world and make such claims. However, I am completely different from them. Let me first make sure that you all understand that, and then let's get to the main part of the story from here. Os. Let's start with a quick recap from last time. Gyakuzuki is performed from Gedan-barai. In this case, some schools make the hikitezu position higher, while others make it lower. Some styles perform a kagizuki instead of a gyakuzuki. The difference depends on which of the two forces that are the source of the power of karate techniques, centrifugal force or COG, center of gravity shift, is emphasized. If the emphasis is on COG shift, the hikite should be high, and the tsuki is gyakuzuki. On the other hand, if the hikite is lowered, or if the tsuki is more like a kagizuki, the emphasis is on centrifugal force. It was also Itosu Anko who changed the gyakuzuki of Matsumura Sokon's Naihanchi to a kagizuki. Itosu was a large man who did not like to move quickly, so he changed the Naihanchi to emphasize the centrifugal force. By staying in place rather than the theosis shift. For further details, please watch this video. I'm sure it's very interesting. Well, today, here's where we start. You take a front-facing stance, do a jo-ge-uke, and then do an ura-ken. The analysis of this action. Now, first of all, I use the expression ura-ken for an explanation. But actually, this action is not ura-ken. Well, I mean in a sense. In his book, My Karate Jutsu, Motobuchoki describes this action as fully extend your left arm as if to strike the enemy in the face in front of you. Do you feel any discomfort when you hear these words? Yes, it's the explanation of fully extend. If this action is really an ura-ken, the arm is not fully extended, but is put back in the middle with a snap like this. Don't you think so? And don't you think he wouldn't use the phrase fully extended? So, if you ask what this action is, if it is not ura-ken, the answer is tsuki training. This is actually training for tsuki while taking on the appearance of ura-ken. Some schools of shurite or tomarite have this kind of movement as training for tsuki. And in Naihanchi, only this last part is being done. The purpose of this movement is to build elbow strength and flexibility. Would it be easier to understand if I took off my dogi? In the action of a karate tsuki, when you return your fist like this, your elbow should not rise up like this. Right? I believe most schools teach the elbows should point downward during a tsuki. The reason for this is that the human forearm has two bones running parallel to each other. They are the radius and the ulna. The radius is a thick bone that connects straight from the knucklehead, base of the index and the middle fingers, but it is not connected to the humerus. Connected to the humerus is the ulna. However, the ulna is a thin bone and is not connected straight to the base of the ring and little fingers. There is a gap in this area of the wrist, and the angle is oblique. Therefore, by twisting the forearm in this way, the two bones of the forearm are crossed and united, creating a skeletal root from the fist head to the humerus and eventually to the shoulder blades, which allows the power to be transmitted to the opponent without a loss. This is the anatomical interpretation of the karate tsuki. Then, of course, you can tighten the Latus Dorsy by pointing the elbows down. The Latus Dorsy is the muscle that connected to the base of the upper arm to the top of the buttocks. and this allows the body to unite, and you can evoke a shift in the whole body's center of gravity by moving your arms. This was the essence of the old karate movement, represented by the classic Naihanchi, right? For more information, please watch this video. But to do tsuki in this way, you need flexibility and strength in the elbow. Without them, the arms would not be fully extended, or the elbows would rotate like this. However, if you do it like this, you can train tsuki without getting into such bad habits. Ura-ken and tsuki are the same action. I explained elbow strike in the third video of this series, and that is the same. That elbow strike looks like an elbow strike, but it is not an elbow strike. This is a movement as training for tsuki. The movement of this elbow strike is the same as the movement of tsuki. I said so. It has exactly the same meaning about this movement of ura-ken. However, there are of course some schools that interpret this ura-ken action as ura-ken as it is. Or rather, there is a majority, the most common, right? In those schools, the interpretation of this jo-ge-uke to ura-ken, for example, is as follows. When an opponent grabs you with both hands, you prevent it with jo-ge-uke and then strike him in the face with ura-ken. I think there are many people who have learned this kind of bunkai. Isn't it wrong? But it is unreasonable to interpret it that way. This movement does not give enough power to the ura-ken. So what they do is, for example, they change that movement like this. This is the way of Okinawa-Shorin ryu, Kobayashi-Shorin. But is it okay to put on these preliminary movements? No, that is not good. Then the others change the jo-ge-uke itself, not like this, but like this. This is the way of Tekki in Shotokan. In this way, the kata is being modified more and more. Therefore, as I always say, it is not a good idea to try to interpret kata in bunkai. Well, not for all kata, but at least for Naihanchi. It's my opinion that it is not a good idea to interpret kata in bunkai. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that the newly modified kata, in this case, Naihanchi of Okinawa-Kobayashi ryu or Tekki of Shotokan, are wrong. Please do not misunderstand me. This is also what I always say, but even if the kata you are practicing is a new modified version, if you are getting stronger through practicing that kata, then it is the correct kata. On the contrary, even if the kata you are practicing now is the one that is an inheritance of the original kata truly, it is meaningless as martial arts training if you are not getting stronger in actual fighting through the practice of that kata. That has always been my point. It is up to you to decide if the kata you are practicing is correct and meaningful. It is not me. You must ask yourself honestly, are you getting stronger through your kata practice? Many karate practitioners are now struggling with the gap between kata and kumite, or actual fighting. Kata was originally designed to be effective training for actual fighting, but I don't know how kata can be useful for actual fighting. There are many such karate practitioners. There are many authoritative senseis who explain kata in terms of bunkai. But karate practitioners who prefer kumite quickly realize that the bunkais are not effective in actual fights. Or if they are, that the kata are not effective as a method for learning the techniques. As a result, they assume that kata are useless for kumite and stop practicing them. On the contrary, karate practitioners who prefer kata accept their sensei's explanations with delusion and refuse to examine the content of that. They continue to run away from actual fighting, i.e. kumite, making the excuse that kumite is not a real fight. I have seen many such examples. Both are very unfortunate. As I said at the beginning of this video, through fighting in Kudo, the modern combat sport closest to the fighting of the era of karate's origins, I have become convinced that kata is truly effective training for actual fighting. I wish to share my gained knowledge and experience with many others. If you are one of those karateka who struggle with the gap between kata and kumite, or if you are one of those karateka or kudoka who wants to stay strong and enjoy intense fights even as you get older, I hope my channel will be helpful. Well, that's all for this video. If you found it interesting, please like it. I am also looking forward to your comment. See you next time. Os.